Welcome back. A new poll from Axios shows most Americans are cool to Christian nationalism. Overall, only 30% of Americans who responded said they adhere to or sympathize with Christian nationalism. Gee, you'd think that might be a little bit of a higher number considering Judeo-Christian values is what America was founded upon. But unfortunately, the persecution of Christians is nothing new and may be a sign of the times. Joining us now, authors of Revelation 9:11, How the Book of Revelation Intersects with Today's Headlines, due out March 26th, Pastor Paul Begley and journalist Troy Anderson. Thank you both so much for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Let's start with you, Pastor. What are your thoughts on this poll and the overall sentiment of Christian nationalism here in America?
Well, I think that it's sad that we're still talking about race when it comes to any subject for that matter. But with the rise of, I think, President Donald Trump and the fact that it looks like he's going to have this nomination, we're going to see this same subject, this same topic come up time and time again, criticizing or attacking really Christians, white Christian evangelicals primarily.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that is indeed what we're seeing happen. I feel like I see new headlines on this each and every day. Troy, what's your response to the latest?
Allison, I'm reminded of a term that the CIA created in the 1960s, a conspiracy theory. And of course, in research I've done over the years, there's actually a professor at a major university in Florida wrote a book about this, and said that this term was used to discourage journalists and other people from digging into government corruption and things like that, keeping prying eyes away kind of thing. So I wonder if this is a similar kind of term, this Christian nationalism, and especially as we move into the presidential election, most of the people that they're labeling Christian nationalists are probably supporters of President Trump. So I think there's a political undertone to this whole thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they're just doing everything they can to ultimately divide and conquer. Of course, we know that is ultimately the goal of the enemy, just sowing fear and hate into the hearts and minds of mankind. But the attack on Christianity is just seemingly everywhere you turn now. It's even in so-called training now for pharmacists by way of diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI or DIE, as I like to call it. But apparently they need to go through this DEI, training on Christian nationalism. But we all know that DEI is not what it pretends to be, right? I mean, there's nothing good about this. Troy, what are your thoughts on this training required now for pharmacists?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems sort of over the top that even pharmacists are required to undergo training about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Christian nationalism and colonialism and all these different things that are really largely a focus in colleges, a sort of this Marxist push for indoctrination of the youth. And it's been very successful. I mean, polls show 40-50% of young people now subscribe to sort of Marxist, even, socialistic and communistic kind of doctrines. And so now this has been rolled out even in the marketplace and in different professions. And so, this is sort of part of the Great Reset plan the World Economic Forum announced a couple of years ago during the pandemic, this transformation of this world, this move into this, a socialistic, some kind of one world system. And of course, the Bible, talks about this. In the end times, there will be this one world system that the Antichrist and false prophet will preside over. Are we getting closer to that? Maybe.
It certainly seems like we are, especially when, they're forcing pharmacists to undergo DEI training regarding Christian nationalism. I mean, what does that have to do with pharmaceuticals? Why would anyone in the pharmaceutical industry need to endure that kind of training? Pastor, your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's again, we're seeing this constant attack on Christianity. I feel like Christianity gets thrown into every category. Every time there's a problem, well, it's those Christians' fault. It's the Christians' fault. If they wouldn't be so dogmatic or so, focused on. In our book, Revelation 9:11, we address these issues. As Troy said, that there's this constant push, a globalist cabal coming against Jesus Christ, and anyone that stands for the gospel of Jesus Christ gets labeled as part of the problem, similar to what the Nazis did to the Jews. We're
Yeah.
seeing the same thing now happening to Christians.
Yeah, we most certainly are, and it's quite upsetting how blatant it all is and flagrant the people opposed to us really are about it. There's just no shame whatsoever, and we're expected to bow down and cater to their ideals. Meanwhile, they just completely disregard really everything that this nation was founded upon and everything that gives them the right to speak their mind. So it really is quite interesting. But I wanted to get your response to this recent video clip of Michael Moore's assessment of the dreaded white Christian nationalist. Let's roll that clip and then we'll come back to discuss.
What is the crime? Because according to my knowledge of history, the enemies of Israel who have been persecuted, the Israelis, the Jewish people of this world have been persecuted for 5,000 years. But for the last 2,000 years, most of the persecution has come from white, European-centric Christians. That's been your enemy. No Palestinian helped to build Auschwitz. No Palestinian stood on the docks of New York City when boatloads of Jewish refugees trying to escape the Holocaust came here to be protected by this country and were turned away at the docks in New York and sent back to Germany to die. No Palestinian did that. No Palestinian ran the Spanish Inquisition. Your enemy is not the Palestinian people. It is white Christian European people who have been slaughtering Jews for the last 2,000 years. And let's just call it for what it is.
So these people are allowed to go on mainstream Mockingbird media outlets and call us the enemy. Pastor, your response?
Here we go with the end justifies the means. And what he was saying was, it doesn't matter that the Palestinians, the Hamas, came over the fences, slaughtering 1,200 Jews, taking 250 of them hostage, many of which were Americans. It doesn't matter that there's been 30,000 rockets pointed right at Jerusalem from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. It doesn't matter that the United Nations has completely passed every resolution they can get their hands on against the Jewish people. The problem is not any of those factions, none of the Islamic jihadis, not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, not Iran, but us God-fearing, believing Christians who support the Jews. I've been to Israel 11 times. I love Israel. I love the Jewish people. See, this is why Michael Moore never gets anywhere in his filmmaking generally, because he spends his time bashing the innocent. So I'm sorry, but the problem right now today, I'm sorry, this isn't the Crusades. That's over. It was bad. It's over. Today, the enemy of Israel is radical Islam, period.
Yep, I'm with you. And Troy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's a long, troubled history of persecution against Jewish people. But what's happening today is when the disciples came to Jesus and asked him about signs of the end times, he told them, watch out that no one deceives you. We're living in a time of just massive deception, psychological operations, media propaganda. The whole gamut is being used against the American public, unlike it's ever been used before. And that's what we're seeing today with these celebrities that come out and say these things. It's part of a concerted agenda. There's a top-down agenda to, push forward this narrative of Christian nationalism and these kind of things, and demonize, essentially Christians. And we've seen this happen in many communist and socialistic countries in the past, and ultimately it leads to violence. It leads to real persecution. So that's to tell me what they're doing here, because they're pushing their agenda, their politics, and it's just a sad thing to see this happening in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It really is so sad. I feel like our country is just crumbling more and more with each and every day. But ultimately, the Bible does, say it would come to this. I mean, these prophecies are seemingly coming true in modern day. The outright persecution of Christians, especially here in America, it does seem like we are really living through end times. Pastor, what does the Bible say about this, and what are we as Christians called to do here?
Okay, the Bible absolutely tells us in Matthew 24 that we will be persecuted. Jesus was asked the question, can you tell us the sign of your coming, the end of the world? And he said, well, there's going to be all kinds of stuff, false Christ, false prophets, wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines. But he said, but then you will be persecuted. Some of you will even be thrown into prison. There will be a great persecution upon the church. We're starting to see it. It is happening actually in many countries around the world. And here in America, it is started. It has begun. Matter of fact, it's why we wrote the book, Revelation 9:11. It shares with you all of the events that we're watching. It's really in process now, unfolding in this world, and certainly in America. We are the strong man who stands for the gospel of Christ. We're going to take the first shots. And so the book's so important to help inspire people to know that greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. We've got the victory in Jesus Christ.
Amen. Beautifully said. We are almost out of time. I'm so grateful for you both for joining us today and talking about this, writing the book about it. It's so critical that people become aware of what's happening if they don't see it already. But with the little bit of time we have left, Troy, tell us where people can go to find the book and where and when it's available, please.
Oh, yeah. So, thanks to God, it's become a #1 bestseller. It's coming out on March 26th. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, pretty much anywhere books are sold. And it has a very hopeful message, too. In some ways, this is an exciting time to be a Christian. God has put us here at this time. And Pastor Bailey talks about bringing in the great harvest revival. So, perhaps we could see a turnaround in America. And so we want to encourage people to get involved and share the good news.
Amen. Well said. Thank you guys so much. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.